Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Louise Nichols. I'm a textile artist and I live in Cornwall. And this is going to be the beginning of a little series of videos called Making Into. So when I first started making kits, everything went into the kit that you needed to make it into either a hanging, a shaped hanging, that kind of thing. So the kits would have wadding and ribbon, little bits of ribbon to hang them with, and they'd have backing fabric and all sorts of other bits that if it was a felt backing, those sort of things. But what I've realized over the years of doing them is that a lot of people don't use those. They either put them into a frame or they'll maybe put them on a cushion or something. And so because the costs of everything are rising, materials and everything, and obviously it costs me money to put those extra bits into a kit, and people aren't using them, to keep the costs of the kits as low as possible, I've decided not to put those bits in anymore. They will be in the original kits, so all the older designs that are still going strong now, in those kits, you will still get your wadding and your bit of ribbon and for making the loops and that type of thing. But in all the new kits, it's going to just be the printed panel with your interfacing, your threads, your felt, step-by-step instructions, templates, all that kind of thing. But there won't be anything to make it into a hanging. So the point of these videos really are to show you different ways then that you can mount and use your embellished print once you've finished it. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about, and they won't come in succession. There won't be sort of another one next week and then the week after. What I'll do is every time I'm making a sample for if I'm doing a fair or if it's a new kit and I'm photographing it ready to put in my shop, every time I'm making a new sample and it's a different process, I'll film it and then it'll come onto YouTube for you to see, so you can see the different ways of finishing them off. So there'll be things like making into a shaped hanging. This has got a felt backing. This is one of my original kits. So again, I'll show you how to make these hangings, whether it's straight from the print or mounted onto another bit of fabric. Putting them onto, this has been stretched onto a what do you call a canvas, an artist canvas. So I'll show you how to do that. Putting them into a hoop as well, how I do that. Putting them into a frame. Trying not to catch my microphone there. So putting them into a frame, I don't know if you can see that, the light's probably reflecting onto it, but anyway, putting them into a frame. And then today's video is going to be about putting them onto a cushion. Okay, so I'm going to take you over there and talk to you a little bit more about how I make my cushions. I almost forgot a little shop update. So I've had lots and lots of sales recently since the subscriber numbers went up. Again, thank you for anybody that's new and joining me. So I've sold out of lots of things in my Etsy shop. I am gradually replacing them, but I'm sure, as you know from watching me, everything is hand printed, everything is put together, the whole kits, all the kits are put together by hand. So it would just take me a little while to build that stock back up, but thank you so much. But I thought I ought to just give you a little update on that as well. So I thought I'd start by just showing you a couple of samples of cushion covers that I've made. So this very simply has been fuser webbed onto the backing fabric with French knots in the corner. This one has got a line of running stitch around the outside and some on the inside as well, and again some French knots on the corners. This one has had some extra leaves added as well after it's been put onto the backing fabric. And with this one, I've added, this is actually my beehive kit. And with this, I've, rather than making the bees sort of 3D and sticking them on with little sticky fixes as with the hanging, I've just appliqued them onto the cushion. And this one, which I held up earlier, hang on, I don't know if you can see that because that pile's mounting up there. It's quite dark today, so I've got a light shining here. I hope it's not blasting out the colour too much. So this one, I've just added some chunky buttons in the corners, and again I've done running stitch, 3 lines of running stitch around the outside. Okay, so this is the design I'm going to put onto a cushion. So this is one of the new designs. This is the bird amongst the leaves in the grey colourway. And you know, sometimes you have an idea of, well, you kind of know, or you don't know, the fabrics that you've got in your stash. I'd had the idea that this would be the one that I would use as the cushion, but actually, so I'm going to trim it down to sort of have a border there. So I'm just going to fold that in so I can see. But actually, it's too samey for me. I don't think it makes the design stand out particularly or sing. So I'm not going to use this one. And the other two, sort of going through the pile, so the other two I pulled out were these darker brown ones. So I quite liked this one, but I don't know if it's just a little bit too dark, a bit too severe. Yeah, I think my favourite is still this one. This is like a tweedy fabric. I can't remember where I got a lot of these fabrics from. You know, I've had some of them for years. I do know that first one I bought in Totnes about 10 years ago, and I have made a couple of cushions that are upstairs using it. But this, I can't remember where this came from, so I can't help you if you were wanting to buy some of it. But I'm liking that. I like the flex in it. I like that it's quite soft. I like that it picks up some of these lighter colours that are going on in there. So this is the one that I'm going to go for. Okay, so the next thing is now to cut the cushion out and to back this with some Bondaweb. Okay, so I've got my fabric laid out, ready to cut. Now, years ago, when I first started making cushions, I made myself a template to cut around. So, so first of all, this is my cushion pad, and it's a 16-inch cushion pad. That's the size I always seem to go for. And then I made these out of felt years ago. So let me tell you what this measures, so I can just cut around it. So this measures 17 inches, and obviously it's 17 inches square. So this is the front piece, and then I make envelope cushions, so the back overlaps the one piece overlaps the other, and this is the piece. So this is about 3/4 of the size of the front piece. So obviously I need to cut 2 of those. So let me just tell you what that measures. So that's going to be 17 inches across there. As I say, this is to fit a 16-inch cushion pad, and it's almost 12 inches deep. So you've got to allow as well, because you're going to have a hem where you're going to turn it in as well. All right. So I'm going to cut around those. Now this is a bit of a wonky edge here. So I'm just sort of lining it up. There is a little bit of a grain to this fabric. I I think this fabric's been washed as well. So I'm just going to cut around. Okay, so that's all my pieces cut out now. So what I'm going to do now is to pin one edge of each of the back pieces, the pieces that are 3/4 the size of the front. So I want to hem one edge of those. So I'm just going to turn it over. I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not being particularly accurate with it. So I'm just going to go along the top edge. And just pop a pin in there. You could use those clips as well, couldn't you, to do this, I'm sure. But I think because I've always used pins, old habits die hard, don't they? Pull that down so you can see it. If you need to measure, then do, if it makes it easier for you. So now I'm just going to turn it like that, and because I've only popped these pins in sort of up to the tips are only on the edge, I can turn that over, and then I'm going to pop it back in that way, like that. And the reason I put my pins this way is because then I don't have to tack it. I can just machine over it while the pins are already in, still in. So it just saves me a little bit of time, really. I know you can buy pins, can't you, that you can machine over. I don't have any of those. Okay, so they're both pinned now, ready. They'll just go under the machine, which we'll do in a little while. So the next thing now, depending on the thickness of the fabric and whether I want to do, for definite, if I know I want to do some extra stitching around the outside, I do usually put an interfacing on the back of here, and I'm going to do that with this because it's quite, there's a little bit of stretch to it both ways, and what I don't want is for it to sort of distort a little bit, and by putting the interfacing on, I feel that just stabilizes it a little bit. So I'm going to use the lightweight interfacing that I use on the back of the prints before I start embellishing them. So I'll cut myself a piece of that, and I'm just going to cut it just inside the edge of the piece of fabric there. Okay, so I'm going to pull it down. You won't be able to see, but I want to make sure it's nice and flat. There we go. Right, okay, so I'm going to cut a piece of that. And also, I'm going to cut my piece of, I said Bonder web, didn't I, earlier, but I use fuser web, which is the same idea. So it's, I'll show it to you now. So this is fuser web. It works in the same way as Bonder web. It's got paper on one side and glue on the other. So you iron it onto the back of a piece of fabric, peel off the paper, and then you're left with a layer of glue on the back of whatever it is that you've ironed it onto, and then you can iron that onto a piece of fabric. So I'm going to cut a piece of this as well for the back of my bird. Now I know I'm going to sort of cut down to this edge, so I don't need to iron it onto the whole of the piece. So I'm going to just sort of cut it, I don't know if you can see there, about there. That will be fine. Get my other, I don't want to use my best fabric scissors on this, do I? Because it's paper. So I'm going to cut it about there. Again, I'm not measuring. I'm just sort of guessing by eye. Pop that away. Right, I'm going to switch my iron on now. Move my cutting mat and put my ironing mat down. Right, okay. So I'm ready to iron this interfacing on. So I'm just trying to hear lots of crinkling in the background, finding a piece of baking parchment. I think that piece will do because I can move it across as I'm ironing. So I'm going to use my baking parchment because I don't think it's going to slip. I won't put a piece underneath this time. So no steam on my iron. I've turned my steam off and I'm just going to very, very slowly, so it gives the glue time to melt, iron this onto the back of my front piece of fabric. I don't put it on the other two pieces. There's no point. I won't be doing any decorative stitching on there. If I was going to add a bit of detail onto the back, then yes, I would still interface it. You can see that sticking down there. And now I'm going to iron my fuser web onto the back of my embellished print. So I just need to make sure, I'm just going to hold it to the light so I can make sure I've covered, that's it, the whole of the design. And I'm still going to use a piece of baking parchment because you can see sort of hanging over the edge here is the original piece of lightweight interfacing that I ironed onto the back before I did my embellishing. And if I put my iron straight onto it, it may well melt, and I don't want that to happen because it will make the fabric go a bit crinkly. So I'm still using my baking parchment while I iron this onto the back of my embellished print. This doesn't need as much heat. It seems to stick fairly quickly, fuser web, so I don't need to take my time quite as much as I did with the interfacing. It should be, in fact, with this, if you add too much heat, it can start going a little bit crinkly, and that I don't want. And then I'm just going to turn it over and just make sure that these edges are stuck down nicely. That looks okay to me. Okay, right. I just switch my iron off. I'm going to move my mat out the way as well and put my cutting mat back on the table. There we go. Okay. So I usually leave this to cool down a little bit before I try and peel it off, because you don't want the glue to start coming away. If you do go to peel off, I'm sure the same with Bondaweb, but if you go to peel it off and you can see the glue's not stuck at all, then you just need a bit more heat. But yeah, this is coming away quite nicely. Okay. So now what I want to do is to trim this down, and I want it to have a border sort of to about there, I think, to allow for these little leaves that pop over the edge here. So I'm thinking probably what I'm going to do is to line my ruler here. Oh, you can get, I've just looked up, I can see the reflection of the light there. Hang on a minute. Let me turn that off. There we go. Hopefully you'll still be able to see that. I'll turn it back on again. Yep, so I'm going to line the black line there with this inside edge line. And I'm going to do this with a rotary cutter. If you don't have a rotary cutter, what I would do is just measure from the edge. So decide what size you want your border to be. So for example, if it's 4 centimeters, I would measure 4 centimeters all the way around. Draw yourself a line with one of those disappearing fabric pens, and then just cut it with a pair of scissors. Okay, but for this one I'm going to use the, oh no, wrong way around. I'm going to use the rotary and hope, need to make sure I press down, because there are little raised bits, you don't want it to move as you are cutting. So again, lining it up with that edge there. I think I am about ready for a new blade in my rotary cutter. Okay, last one, and it's this edge here. You can just about see it through the plastic there. Oh, so that's missed a bit. I definitely need a new wheel in. Let me just trim that. Not a new wheel, a new blade. There we go. Okay. So let me bring my main piece of fabric back. So that, just check. I mean, it may be, if you're not sure about your border, give yourself a little bit more. You can always cut it down. Whereas if you go too tight to start off with, you can't add it back, can you? So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to iron that into position now, but I'm going to just double check that it is in the right place. So I'm going to put my ironing mat back down, and then I'm going to just measure make sure it's central before I iron it on. Okay, so that's ironed on now. So you saw I used the baking parchment as I was ironing over the top, and then I ironed it from the reverse as well, because with the little bits of felt and things, it's quite a lot of bit of thickness to get through for the heat. So I just wanted to make sure it was ironed nice and securely. I wanted it all to be stuck down. So we're ready now to go and machine around the outside edge. So I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine now. Okay, so I'm going to machine the back pieces now, do those hems that I pinned earlier. So I've got brown thread in the top, brown in the bobbin, and I'm set on to straight stitch. And I'm just going to use the edge as a guide. I can feel where that ridge is, so it's just sort of set slightly in from the edge there. I keep my finger on the thread as I'm lowering it, and then that stops the thread from pulling through. And then I'm just going to straight stitch down here. Okay, so they're ready for a press now. Well, I'm really sorry, but I thought I'd recorded me zigzagging around the edge. So I don't know if you can see there what I've done. I've just, using a grey thread, it's a grey fabric that I've printed on here, and I've just zigzagged around that outside edge there. So I've not turned it under or anything. I've just, as you saw, I've ironed it straight onto the fabric, and then I've done a zigzag. Now, in the 16 block Christmas block videos, in one of those where I'm machining the panels onto the background fabric, it's the same process. So if you really need to see that, you could go and have a look at that. It will be repeated again in this series of making into, but I don't know how long that will be. So I'm really sorry about that. Anyway, let's carry on. So let me just press my focus button. There we go. Okay, so that's locked now. So I've pressed these. You saw me machining these. I'd realised that I'd not recorded the other bit when I machined these. Anyway, so they're pressed. So they're ready to go. And so what I need to decide now is whether I want to do any extra stitching around the outside edge. So I'd started getting a few threads together. I think that's a little bit bright. I'm not going to go with that one. And I don't think, because there are quite a lot of French knots on here, and you've got them in these corners here, I don't think I'm going to do them up here. She said, hang on a minute, I'm just wondering whether this sort of pale, I'm going to have to just take my microphone off a minute, hang on. Right, I'm back. Sorry. I'm just wondering whether to do French knots in this paler colour. I was going to go for a darker or something to pick up this. Yeah, maybe I will do some French knots. Yeah, I think I will. And what I'll do, I'll double the thickness of the thread so that I get a really nice chunky knot on that corner there. And then I'm thinking as well, I wasn't sure whether to use this one, but I might do a line of running stitch sort of right on the edge of that zigzag there. I don't know, that one or that one. That one's nice. I think that one, actually. That one sort of disappears a little bit. Maybe that one there. And I think as well, again, just to sort of, or do I need it? I'm going to do those first, then I'm going to decide if I want any more running stitches in this outside edge here. Sometimes it just sort of softens it. Yeah, I might well. Now, let me just move those out of the way. If, like with the robbing cushion, let me bring that back in. It's got these extra leaves on, so it would be at this point now that I would add some extra leaves. So I can show you sort of quickly. Let me just I'll cut you a couple of leaves out. So for example, if say I wanted to do some extra leaves in this sort of colour, I mean, it might be worth cutting some out in paper first, and just having a little play. Yeah, it might be that you want to use that as the same as that, isn't it? It might be that you want to use pick up all the colours of felt that are in there. So I would just begin to build, you know, a few leaves around the outside like that. Just have a little play with it. You could cut them out of paper first and position them to maybe help you decide so you don't waste any felt as you're cutting it out. And then I would just pop a little bit of Pritt stick onto the back of these and stick them down, and then you could either machine around them, or with these I've just done that the same as I do when I'm stitching felt onto the print. I've just done that little up and over stitch around the outside. Then I've couched down the middle and added a little berry there. Because it's a robin, it's quite Christmassy, so I've put some red berries on that one. And then if you're going to still do your running stitch, then you can just stitch in between the leaves if you want to. And you've not got that thread running underneath, have you? Not that it would really matter on this if it was running underneath. Okay, so that's how I would add on my extra leaves. Right, okay, so I'm going to do the French knots and then do my running stitch. So let me get myself threaded up. So double thickness, so I'm going to tie a knot in the end there. I want it right on this corner here. I'm going to go round twice. I won't show you how to do all of these because there are other videos, aren't there, showing you these stitches. Okay. Actually, that doesn't stand out quite as much as I thought it would, wouldn't you think, from looking at it there? It's obviously how the light catches it. I think I'm still going to go for it though. So I'm going to tie off at the back there. So I'll do all of these and then I will find a better pair of scissors than that. There we go. And then I'll try the running stitch around the inside edge. I'll see how that looks. There we go then. So I finished stitching around the outside. So I love how this colour here just picks up these sort of rusty burnt orange colours, and I'm sticking with that paler knot on the corner there, and then I've ended up doing 2 rows of running stitch on the backing fabric, and the colours I've used for those, I know I can't tell you the colour of the fabric that it's been mounted onto, but I can tell you the colour of the threads that I've used. So the French knots in the corner, that's an anchor size 8 thread, colour 392. And the running stitch that falls just inside the edge of the print, so I've done it literally on the edge where the zigzag is, and that's a Finker size 16 thread, and it's shade 7944. And then I was looking at this one, this is like a winter white, but I've opted for a slightly darker grey. It was a little bit softer on this fabric. And this again is a Finker 16, and the shade is 8728. So they're the threads that I've stitched around the outside with. So I'm ready now to, I'm not going to press it again. I think it's still reasonably flat. I'm going to now put the whole cushion together. So I'm going to turn that over like that, and then, no, I'm not. Louise, keep it that way. You don't want it turned over because we're going to have right sides together. Gosh, I'm glad I remembered that before I started pinning it. Otherwise, I'd have had to have started all over again. Now, I like, let me get my other sample again. So this is the front, and I like the flap on the back. I like it to be the top one that comes down over the bottom one. I don't want the bottom flap to be sort of open at the top. I kind of feel as if that would be kind of a bit, I like it to go the other way. So I need to think about that as I am pinning this all together. So what I want is to pin the top one on first, and the underneath one on second. So I'm lining up that top edge there, okay, like that. And the same with this piece, I'm lining up the bottom edge, and I've got the 2 hemmed edges in the middle. So when it's turned back through, this will be on the outside. This will be my top flap, the top section on the outside. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So I'm now going to pin it all the way round. Just make sure that that's lined up at the bottom there. Yep, that'll do. So get my pins. I'm going to pin it all the way round the outside. Okay, nearly there. I find by pinning it, by having the pins going this way rather than this way, it stays flat and it's less bumpy, and it doesn't distort the fabric quite so much. So I've pinned that all that way, and then what I'm going to do is turn it over, because I can see then if I've got any sort of overhang there, because I'm actually going to Am I going to machine it from this side? I'm going to cut off where there's some extra. No, I'm not machining it from this side. God, Louise, get a grip. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to use, you can't see what I'm doing there, can you? I'm just trimming this down where it overhangs here. Can you see there's a bit of overhang? So I'm just trimming that off. Yeah, I'm just going to use the edge of the fabric as my guide. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off down here where it overhangs. So and I'm going to machine it from the other side. So I'm going to machine it from this side, and what I don't want is to follow an edge that hangs over too far, so that then I'm sort of missing what's underneath it. So that's all kind of trimmed down nicely now. So I'm going to go back over to the machine. I'm not going to tack it, I'm just going to leave the pins in. I'm going to go back over to the machine and machine this all together. So I've still got my brown thread in here from machining the hems on the two back sections. So I'm just going to start on the top corner there. I'm just going to move my machine so it's a little bit more. That's it. Hopefully that's still in shot. So straight stitch, switch it on, and I'm starting about the same distance in from the top edge as I am from the side edge, and I'm lining the edge of the cushion with the edge of my machine foot. And I want to keep this fairly flat, so I'm sort of going to hold it like this. And I'm feeling for when I'm going to get to the first of the hemmed edges. I can feel it coming up just there. And when I get to one of those, I'm going to do like a double back stitch. And the same on this one here. And then that just reinforces those joins. So as you're putting your cushion in, there's a little bit of pull, isn't there, on those joins? So it just means that they're nice and strong. So I'm going to finish machining all the way around this cushion then. So when I get to the corner now, I'm just aware of not going too far. And I want to turn with my needle in so it holds it in place like that. And then I'm ready to go again. So I've taken all the pins out now. So all I'm going to do now is let's see if that's it, you can see better on that one. I'm going to just trim that excess off on the corner there. So I'm going to do that on all four, so that when you turn it through, it just means you've got you can get a nicer corner, a nicer point almost on your corner. And then I'm going to turn it through. That's a relief. The flap is going down. Okay, so there we go. So there's the cushion cover. So what I'm going to do now, I've got, this is a size 9 wooden knitting needle, and this is my prodder. So I'm just going to make sure that I've poked. I'm just going to very gently sort of ease, hope you can see that, ease those corners out like that. And then what I also like to do with my knitting needle is to run it down the seams, so it just again sort of pushes those where I've machined. I like to kind of just go down the edge like this, and it just pushes those seams that you've just stitched out. Can you see there? I hope you can. So I'll do that all the way around. So that's lightly pressed as well. And as you saw, I was just making sure I'd got those hems out. What you don't want to do is to iron it and it be kind of tucked inside. Right, get my cushion inner. There we go. One finished cushion. So these cushion covers, washing. Now the ink that the design is printed with is a fabric block printing ink that air cures into the fabric, and it is washable at 30 degrees. Now felt is pre-shrunk, as you know, and so obviously I haven't washed this one. This hasn't gone through the washing machine, but I do have a couple of cushion covers that I did try through the washing machine just to check that they washed okay. So the way that I would wash this, if you need to put it through the washing machine, obviously take it off the cushion, turn it inside out into a wash bag, 30-degree wash. And then when you iron it, use your baking parchment again to iron it, whichever way round. Turn it back through, obviously, so it's the right way round, and then give it a press, and it will be absolutely fine. Okay, so there's the finished cushion then on my chair. I'm really pleased with that. Let me just show you the back as well. So there's that overlap there. If you have this bit too narrow, sometimes, especially if you've got a very well padded cushion, it kind of pushes it out a little bit, whereas by giving yourself quite a good overlap, keeps it nice and neat on the back as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. So the next video will be probably making into a hanging in this series, and I'll see you next time.